disability is a condition of brain that impair the acquisition of knowledge and skills, especially neurodevelopmental circumstances that affect the intellectual process, educational attainment, and the acquisition of skills necessary for independent living and social functioning. Representatives of organizations working for the education and welfare of the people with learning disability are known as the National Joint Committee on Learning Disabilities. This committee also used the term learning disability to denote a discrepancy between a child's apparent learning ability and the level of achievement. The identification and description of learning disabilities as being deficient general learning processes, centering mostly on what we today call as distractibility, hyperactivity, visual perceptual, and perceptual motor problems, began in the Western world in the 1950s and 1960s. The major developments of the learning disability movements during this period centered on children who appeared normal in many intellectual skills but also displayed a variety of cognitive limitations that seemed to interfere with their ability to read, write, and learn in the classroom. Learning disability was seen primarily as processing a condition with difficulty in cross-modal integration. The effect of learning disabilities or differences are not limited to educational outcomes. People with learning disabilities may also have social problems. Neuropsychological differences can affect the accurate perception of social cues in a group. The causes of learning disabilities are not found particularly, and there is no obvious cause for learning disability. However, causes of neuropathy include heredity and genetics, problems during pregnancy and birth, and learning disabilities are caused by genetic or neurobiological factors that alter brain function in ways that affect one or more cognitive process involved in learning. These processing problems can interfere with learning basic skills such as reading, writing, or math. They can also interfere with high-level skills such as organization, time management, abstract reasoning, long or short-term memory, and attention. It is important to understand that learning disabilities can affect a person's life outside of academics and interfere with relationships that a person have with family, friends, and colleagues. Since difficulties in reading, writing, or mathematics are recognizable during school years, the signs and symptoms of learning disabilities are most often discovered during this period. However, some people do not receive an assessment until they have finished high school or even go through life not knowing why they have a problem in academics or work or in relationships with family and friends. This is why learning disabilities are called hidden disorders. A learning disability cannot be cured, but with appropriate support and intervention, people with learning disability can achieve success. Following are the four major types of learning disability: dysphasia, speech and language disorder; dyslexia, reading disability; dysgraphia, writing disability; dyscalculia, disability in mathematics.
Dyslexia. Dyslexia is a disability that is characterized by reading below the level expected for one's age. This was also known as word blindness until 1960s. The severity of the effects varies from person to person. Issues can arise when a person has trouble in spelling words, reading quickly, writing words, mentally sounding out words, pronouncing words when reading aloud, and comprehending what they have read. These issues are frequently identified at school. People with this disorder have a normal desire to learn, and the difficulties that they face are involuntary. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, developmental language disorders, and math challenges are also more common in people with dyslexia. It is thought that a combination of genetic and environmental factor contributes to dyslexia. Some cases have a family history. Acquired dyslexia or alexia is a term sometimes used to describe dyslexia that develops as a result of traumatic brain injury, stroke, or dementia. Disparities in the way the brain processes language account for the underlying mechanisms of dyslexia. A series of tests on memory, vision, spelling, and reading comprehension are used to identify dyslexia. Dyslexia is a distinct from reading difficulties brought on by unsuitable instruction, lack of learning opportunities, or issues with hearing or vision. Oswald Birken first clinically described dyslexia in 1881, but it was Rudolf Berlin, an ophthalmologist in Stuttgart, who first used the term dyslexia in 1883. He used the phrase to describe the case of a young boy who, in spite of displaying typical intelligence and physical abilities in all other aspects, had a great difficulty to read and write. In a report to the British Medical Journal titled Cognition Word Blindness, a British physician named W. Pringle Morgan from Seaford, East Sussex, has even published a description of learning disorder that only affects reading.
To assess the possibility of dyslexia, a variety of tests are used in clinical and educational settings. Initial testing that raises the possibility that a person may have dyslexia is frequently followed by a comprehensive diagnostic evaluation to ascertain the severity and nature of the disorder. Some test results provide guidance on how to implement teaching techniques. A thorough evaluation should take the various possibilities into account because a variety of different cognitive, behavioral, emotional, and environmental factors could all contribute to difficulty to read. These tests and observations consist of common tests of cognitive ability include the Stanford Binet Intelligence Scales, Woodcock-Johnson tests of cognitive abilities, and Wechsler Intelligence Scale for children. It would be more challenging to read if one had poor cognitive ability. These tests comes in various iterations for various age ranges. Nearly all of these are administered by psychologists. It has not yet been possible to identify a confirmatory profile or pattern of cognitive tests that results would confirm or disprove reading disorder according to Mather and Snyder. Secondly, the use of rating scales or behavior checklists by parents, teachers, and others to collect data on young people's emotional and behavioral functioning is known as screening or evaluation for mental health disorders. Similar versions of several checklists are available for parents, teachers, and children who are old enough to read proficiently. Examples include the Strengths and Difficulties Questionnaire and the Behavioral Assessment for Children. It is easy to compare the severity of symptoms to what would be usual for the younger person's age and biological sex because each of these has nationally representative norms. Some checklists, such as the Vanderbilt ADHD rating scales of the test for children anxiety related emotional disorders, more directly relate to psychiatric diagnosis. The results from standardized tests are useful in assessing development in addition to looking over grades and teachers' notes. These include examinations that are given in groups to an entire class of students at once, such as the LOA test of educational development. Moreover, they could consist of individually delivered accomplishment exams like the Woodcock Johnson or the Broad Range Achievement Test. Again, the individually administered exams demand more specialist instructions.